Well, I'd like to introduce all of our distinguished guests. First, we have Roque Baños. And we have Mychael Danna. Ramin Djawadi. Greyson-Williams. And Tom Holkenborg, a.k.a. Junkie XL. Fans of Film Music 6, we're here. So thank you guys so much for coming. Full states here. So Stanley, Kaya Savaz, Nancy Hoven, La La Land Records. Vred Sarabon Records, Greg Curtis, Marshall Harvey, David Cooker, The Bridge, and the Bridge staff, home of the Fans of Film Music. Edwin Windler, Warner Brothers, Daniel Schweiger, Disney, Krakow Polling, PR, Lakeshore Records, Bill Conti, Michael Giacchino, Dragon's Domain Records, Field 59 for the streaming, which hopefully is streaming right now all over the world. Thumbs up, great. Catherine Garcia, Ray Costa, and Costa Communications, Derek Gebler, Beth Krakauer, Water Tower Music, all the assistants, publicists, agents that got you guys in those seats. Let's start it.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Schweiger. I'm the soundtrack editor of filmmusicmag.com and assignmentx.com. And I really want to give a big thanks to Peter Hackman for having me back to moderate for the 6th time Fans of Film Music, the Holiday Edition. We are back at the Bridge Recording Studio, the home of so many great film soundtracks. Now I want to welcome our composers in alphabetical order. Now first up, Spain has given us many notable composing imports, and one on the rise is Roque Baños. In Hollywood, he's played the vengeance of the Evil Dead and Old Boy, but nothing has yet matched the emotional size of a great white whale for the true story of Moby Dick in the Heart of the Sea, opening this coming Friday. Let's give a big hand for Roque Baños. Careers. Michael won the best scoring Oscar. Michael's shown a real Now, while he's excelled at scoring the big screen fantasy of Pacific Rim, Iron Man, and the upcoming Warcraft, it's on television where Ramin Djawadi really rules HBO's The Game of Thrones. Now, I think his work has helped create the most epic cult show of all, and the music has grown, I think, to the size of Lord of the Rings. Let's give a big hand to Ramin Djawadi. Now, going by the name of Junkie XL, the Netherlands' Tom Holkenborg has gone from being a songwriting sensation to becoming one of Hollywood's most stylistically impressive composers. This year alone, he's laid down the treble percussion for the awesome Mad Max Fury Road, created A Criminal Prayer for Black Mass, and provided rocking extreme sports criminalism for Point Break. Next year, he's going to be taking off with Batman vs. Superman. Let's give a big hand to Tom Holkenborg, a.k.a. Junkie XL. Now, few composers have inventively or rhythmically made such an impression on today's scoring for animation or live action, like Harry Gregson-Williams, who's never more powerful than his work for the directing team of Ridley Scott and his late brother Tony Scott on such powerhouse scores as Man on Fire, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and Exodus. Now, after playing a terrifying alien world for Prometheus, Harry Gregson-Williams takes a wonderfully inward approach to being lost in space as he sciences the score out of The Martian. Let's give a big welcome to Harry Gregson-Williams. Now, I'm going to start off by asking one question per composer, and I'm going to turn it over for you guys. Now, Roque, what's the challenge of playing the true story of Moby Dick for Ron Howard? I mean, this is certainly your biggest Hollywood leap so far. Tell us a little bit about the score for In the Heart of the Sea.
Okay, first I have to apologize for my speech. I'm a little bit stuttered, and always when I try to say this, I don't stutter, but then after I do, so you know. So it was an amazing experience. A, a I think the story that Ron wanted to tell was more a more than an adventure or what really inspired the book. More than that was like a fight between nature and humanity. Like how human being damage nature and how the nature react to we were more focused with the score on giving like a sound, like a sound coming from nature, like as if the music was coming from the sea, all that thing to express like the force of of all that. And it has been, like I said, it has been an incredible experience, and he's an amazing human being. I really enjoyed it. And
Now, Ramin and I have been start to get together the storyline of Thrones.
I actually had to heavily powerful in like Daenerys, for example. You need a theme for her because she'll do something big.
Tom, I mean, Mad Max is such an amazing fusion of essentially an art film with a post-apocalyptic action movie. And it's a journey, I think, that's taken you like almost 2 years to do. I mean, can you tell us about working with George Miller and just seeing this film come together? I mean, it's been voted Best Movie of the Year by the National Board of Review, which is pretty astounding.
Well, I'll be really honest with Mad Max. Yeah, we worked on it for 2 years, on and off. And it felt like it was fighting against all odds, it felt so like the movie is so weird when you see it. When I saw it, I actually came off a plane. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I went to his place and I saw the whole movie. It was like 3 hours 20 long at that point, and it had no beginning and no ending. It was just like the chase until they got to that place. And it was like so overwhelming to see that with the jet lag, and it was. But George is so incredibly meticulous. Like every detail you see in the film, he has a story behind it why that detail is there, and he expects that from the music too. So for me, it was really like the ultimate one-on-one film scoring masterclass course, or whatever you want to call it, because he would make my life so miserable and great at the same time, and I learned so much from him, to deal with and what to do with themes and how to develop them and how to create an arc. And in 6 weeks, I wrote, I think, in 20 minutes that was left. That
We call a space opera, so it's just a giant of, again, playing a personal space.
After having, I've worked, that was a crusade movie. Spectrum was kind of open. Obviously, he wants his film to be successful. He's very prolific, him and his brother. I mean, almost an artist, and I realized that when I went to Spy. I said, yeah, I think I can, yeah. I'm pretty sure a space where he goes and paints every day. The first cut of Spy Game I saw had just the best moments of the score from Enemy of the State. And when the first cut I saw of Man on Fire had the best moments of Enemy of the State and Spy Game. Right. So after a while, there was this tapestry of music that was all the best bits that you've ever written. for this thing. So it became more and more difficult to maneuver within that spectrum. With Ridley, it was more, okay, let's think about the color red, so the red planet.
Wow.
Okay, let's think about that. so it was a new experience for me, yeah.
Very great work.
Hello.
Right, Jeff Danna has arrived, cliffhanging moment, but he is here. I want to properly introduce Jeff Danna, whose own eclectic voice can be heard in the cult Boondock Saints pictures, the rampaging video game adaptations of Silent Hill Revelation and Resident Evil Apocalypse, and the comic eye of Leaves of Grass. Let's give a big welcome to Jeff Danna. Now, Michael and Jeff, you both worked together on many scores, Tideland, Fracture. You've gotten Emmy nominations for your teaming on Camelot and Tyrant. And what's amazed me is that you always have a singular musical voice. Does Big Brothers just make that whole composing process easier, especially when you have a movie like The Good Dinosaur, which goes through such a major evolution in allowing you to write what I think is actually the first prehistoric Western score of all time?
Yeah, I think clearly, we come from the same household. We grew up listening to the same music. Our parents were both musical, and we had all those influences. We went and did all kinds of projects together. So we're back so far that the only time we ever think about it is when people ask us now, hey, how do you guys work together? Do you fight? Hell yeah, we fight. But, we at this point, after all these years, there's a lot of respect behind it, and it's all about the making the product better, making the music better, and raising the game, and I think both of us have our own kind of areas where we're particularly strong, and so we've sort of been able to navigate a score like this, like The Good Dinosaur, which is a great deal of music, and like all Pixar films, it kind of has this huge emotional range. And I think the two of us working together, and Jeff played his whole set of exotic strumming instruments, Turkish sazes and jumbushes and all these things, just to make that Western thing a little odd. So we didn't use any guitars, so it's all kind of exotic, strange instruments. And so there's that, and I'm playing piano, and so yeah, it was kind of like what we've always done, and the way we've always worked, and yeah, it was a really rewarding project in that way.
Jeff, what do you think, man?
That was a pretty loquacious answer. Yeah, it's like Mike said, it's a very natural thing that we don't think that much about. I think one of the highlights when I think of us working together, it was really kind of one of the biggest challenges is the stuff we do with Terry Gilliam, because there's two things I will say. I mean, with Terry, he's sort of animated anyways. It's live action, but it's kind of his whole mind, his whole thought process is so outside the box and unusual that it's sort of like that beautiful thing that happens in animation where you don't have the constraints of the real world. There's really no constraints in Terry's world.
Which movie is that?
Tideland and The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
I don't think I've seen either of those. And he's a wacko, isn't he? I mean, he's crazy.
Yeah. That would be correct. But just living in Terry's world and working in it on those films, we were able to sort of, much like we did on Pixar, and we actually went much further on Tideland, which is a very strange movie. And so that was actually one of those cases where having such a good collaborator was very useful, because Terry was always wanting to push it and stretch it and test it and be as outside the box as it could while still making sense musically. And then the other thing about the collaboration that we did for him was that Tideland, which was an odd and difficult kind of musical canvas, was there was no temp in it, which sort of sounds like an amazing thing sometimes, like, oh great, no temp love, but the temp is so often a starting point for a conversation, even if it's like, I hate this temp because that I remember us going to London, being jet lagged as hell, getting off the plane and going straight to the spotting session and watching this very strange film with no music whatsoever in it. And Terry was describing she's like a little princess, and it's a fairy tale, it's a magic kingdom, and Jeff Bridges is in it, and he's dead for most of the movie. He dies in reel 2, I think, right? But he's in the movie till reel 6, just slowly decomposing. It's very weird. And Terry kept talking about fairy tales and princess, and I remember thinking, God, this is really weird. And Mike just kept not going, right? Yeah.
That's my job.
We're on it.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it makes total sense, Terry. And I remember thinking, fuck, I hope he knows what he's talking about. So that was a real challenge, and that was a great thing to have a good partner on, because it was really an interesting thing to find what that was to start with.
The thing about Terry, though, that you have to say is the way the temp score is Terry himself. A scene will be playing, and he'll go, yeah, it's something like, I literally would be writing down the tempo. Okay, that's about 140, and yeah, it actually was kind of a temp.
Daniel, can I ask Tom? I'm interested to know how George Miller temps, or if he temps at all.
No temp.
No, that's what I figured.
Yeah, there's no. Actually, when I met him, he was not convinced the movie needed music at all.
Yeah.
He said no. He said, I know you're a composer. It's great that you're here, but actually, I don't think that this movie needs music, because there's cars, there's a guitar player, and there are drummers on the back of the truck. That will be fine. That's all we need. And then
So do you use that?
well, I recorded all the drums for that movie myself, but I had to come up with a rhythm that was sync with what these guys were doing.
Right,
But there were 6 guys on the back of the truck, and they're all playing something else. So it's like, okay, I pick drummer number 1, 2, and 3, and let's come up with a rhythm that kind of works with these 3 guys, and then forget about the other guys. And the same with the guitar player. The guitar player. And that was funny too. Like George wanted Jack White to be the guitar player, but then he's wearing this mask and this suit. And manager of Jack White was saying to George, "I don't think Jack White wants to spend 9 months in Namibia just not being recognized as Jack White and stand in front of the truck." So they found somebody else.
Well, he wouldn't have needed makeup for that part. Greatest guitar solo ever in a movie. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and if I can ask, as opposed to asking a question for every single composer, just to get the most questions, and it should be a question for one composer apiece or 2 brothers. So let's get started with your questions. Eddie?
Right.
I was really curious what your process was, like understanding the music that came from the game, especially the end scene. I felt like that really captured what it's like to play Silent Hill when the ending happens. There's that very specific sound that I can't really describe, but
You're talking about the first one, right?
yes.
Yeah, no, the first film, Christoph Gans is a huge gamer, and he wanted basically to make a film that was like playing the game with a little more meaning, but not that much meaning. He liked it. He really liked it to be kind of obtuse, and so really the call for the music was just replicate Akira's music and sound design, but make it, fit the picture better, make it sound vintage and old. And I think those old games had like 4K, like really lo-fi, but also it's got to sound amazing in 5.1. It was a huge challenge just to replicate something so odd and unusual, because Akira is an amazing sound designer. So that was the biggest thing, was just trying to get inside of his head. It's a very unusual place that he comes from, which is really cool. But the movie needed more musical content than just his sound design. So there was just a whole push and pull of, we have to do the game music, and we have to be very faithful to the game music, but somehow we have to get a little more out of these characters and the emotion of it. And the ending, I'm trying to remember the ending now. I think it's a song that's one of the songs from the game.
Yeah, that's the little piano feel, if I remember correctly.
That's right. And it was actually a big challenge just to get his pianos to sound like, he didn't use real instruments for anything. And so if I used a real piano, the director said, well, it's really beautiful, but that doesn't sound like the game. And at times I would sample the piano right off the game, and he would say, well, that really sounds like shit. So it was really, that score was really a sonic adventure as much as anything. And it was only to the second film that I actually got to write more like music.
Next question.
I have a question for Roque from one of your German fans. And she asks, which classical composer did have any influence on you?
Oh, wow. I think many. If I have to say few, maybe Stravinsky. I love his work, but I don't think that is an influence. I mean, to consider that a composer, from any style influences you, that's something that I don't know if anyone sitting here can tell, but I have no idea who. I mean, I like the work of many composers, and I when I was student, I tried to analyze, like scores and and how the music was made, but not just I'm sorry, in classical, um, as I was having a classical training, no, but I also tried to analyze, like rock music. I'm a jazz player too, so just like, but I don't know what composer would influence me. I have a story. When I did my first score, that was in 1998, and like I listened to film film scores, but not that much. I you know I my I was I listened to 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 uh, to to a lot of like different styles and all that. So when I wrote that, a the how's that called? The uh, the uh, the uh, critics for that score uh, were saying that I had a clear influence from Bernard Herrmann, and and at that time I just
Hey man, I'd take that if I were you. Jeez.
yeah
It's not like you said Danna or something.
I just knew one score for no, not even was the score. Was just one theme for from Psycho, and then it was like, oh my god, I have to check to check out his music to see if that's true, because
Check out The Machinist. Next question.
Ramin, we've obviously watched the Marvel Universe expand beyond what we ever thought they'd be doing with it, but when you started with Iron Man, was there any sense as you were creating the music for it that you were establishing a fabric to build on in the sound of the film?
Not at the time, really. I mean, it was because it was. I guess it was really the first film of all those movies. So it was not really discussed as such. I think the focus was solely on Iron Man and to just stay with this particular movie.
Great standalone story.
Yeah, and the whole guitar thing. I mean, it was really Jon Favreau's vision. I mean, he'd always kept what he knew. He knew that he wanted a different score than, let's say, Spider-Man and Batman. He always, in every meeting, he just kept going, no, more this, more this. So he wanted more guitar. So and he always also says, Tony Stark he's kind of a rock and roll guy. So let's give him guitars. I thought it was a cool idea, to try to be a little bit different with the score and go more rock and roll.
Next question.
For Harry, are there any plans for another Shrek movie or any movie for kids?
Any plans for another Shrek movie? Well, no, you'd have to actually not far from here is DreamWorks Animation. You'd have to ask Jeffrey Kessel. But I tell you what I did do recently. DreamWorks called me up and said, look, we're doing a Shrek adventure ride in London underneath the big eye there, the thingamabob. Would you do it? So I said, yeah, I'd be bloody offended if you asked anybody else. Of course I would. What you got? I said, well, there's only about 3.5 minutes, but we've got about 4 months to do it. So I said, oh, okay, that doesn't sound very familiar. Fine, so I did it, and actually, when I was over at Abbey Road recording The Martian with my family, came over, all my kids. We went and did the ride, and it was pretty cool. But in terms of a Shrek 5, I think they probably milked that cow already. That cow may be dry. I don't know. No one's talked to me about it. Perhaps they're talking to John Powell about it. Yeah.
Peter?
I have a question. I'll say this, Mychael Danna. How hard is it with all your composing to balance home life and all that? Because I know you guys put in crazy, crazy hours. How do you handle all that?
Has my wife put you up to this question? Why are you singling me out? I'm just curious. Your timing is bizarre, let me tell you. Anyway, well, the answer is really badly. Honestly, the honest answer to that is that when we get together as composers, that is one of the most popular topics amongst us, is how the hell do we do this? It is an incredibly demanding job. It takes everything you have, and that includes your time. And notwithstanding some composers who say they only work till 5, I just and you hear the reaction here, and I would like to bring one of those guys up here and really put a lie detector test on him, because I think it's complete bullshit. Frankly, or else they have a team of people writing it for them. There's no other way, because it just takes time. The equation is really simple: good score, time. It's as simple as that. And the more hours you can put into writing the score, the better it will be. It's kind of as simple as that. And if you cheat or you take a shortcut, people will hear the difference. And none of us here sitting at this table want that. We all want the best score we can get. And we all, many of us at least have families, we have kids, little kids, and it is a constant conflict. And I would love to open it up to somebody else, because I don't have any answers.
Man, having just done The Good Dinosaur, that must have been a fairly smart move, because I know that I have 5 children, and children are very important to me in my life and have been. And it's no coincidence I spent a decade doing animation that they could see, because they couldn't see Man on Fire or Shrek or any of these things. Spy Game, well, it's just totally deeply inappropriate for small children. So actually, I mean, I understand The Good Dinosaur took a lot out of you guys, and it must have been, working for Pixar must have been quite a thing. But I've often wondered what would happen if I would have ever done one. I don't think I'll ever be asked now, because clearly there's a guy called Giacchino who does most of them, and
well, he say that.
Actually, I was on a panel with him the other day, and I was asked. We were asked that same question. He said, "I only work 9 to 5 and not weekends."
Well, I think Harry and Jeff and I, people that have worked on animation, that's one way you can combine family life and film life. Is I sit my 5-year-old, on my knee while I was writing The Good Dinosaur. So that's one way you could do it. But yeah, I just don't understand. I guess you're just way more talented than any of us.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep the family as close as I can. That's why I work from home. I can pretty easily multitask. So for me, it's very easy to work 15 minutes, very concentrated on the scene, and it's like, I want to have a smoke or a cup of coffee, and just walk into the house and just play with my son for 5 minutes and go back in. I don't feel like, now I need to really get into it. So that's the benefit that I have. But to give you an example, to compliment what you just said, it's like I went to after the end of the 18 months was 14 weeks going to Sydney and sit every day with George to finalize the cues, and I brought my wife and my son, and he would keep massaging, and we were getting to the end of that process, and then I was with Bob Badamy, who's a very seasoned and experienced music editor, and without him I would absolutely have cracked. And so he kept my back straight, and he would constantly say, like, we'll work it out. And then after 14 weeks, we played back the last couple of cues that needed to get approved. But George wants to always see 2-3 reels at the same time, to then get to the scene that is coming up, so to feel like how it feels. And he would constantly send us back. And these days, this was 14 weeks, 7 days a week. And we started like 8 o'clock in the morning. We went on to like 1, 2 a.m. every day. And then at the end of 14 weeks, at a certain point, he just sat there. And then he got emotional, and he started crying. And he wiped his tears away. And he turned around, and he said, he gave me a hug, and he says, "It's done. I'm happy. It's done." And then I said, "George, that's great. I got to pee." And I went to the restroom, and I basically cried for 50 minutes straight. Like, all the stress came out.
Wow.
So that's how tough it is.
Next question.
I have one question for Ramin. So I heard you applied to score a Great Wall, which is going to be directed by a Chinese director. So did you started it, or if you started it, what's like the difference, working with a Chinese director with the Hollywood?
Well, I can't say too much at this point because it's still very early on. But what I can say is that I've met with him, and he's an incredible director, incredible person. I really admire his work. And the one thing that's actually interesting for me is that I've never done before. Is he actually he doesn't speak English, so we actually have to communicate via a translator. So it's very interesting when you speak with somebody and then you're trying to address the person, but you're actually sort of looking at the translator, and it's like this weird triangle, and you start looking, go like, yes, then he answers and looks at the translator, and you go, okay, I understand. Yeah. So it's tricky. It's something to get used to. I've never done that before, but
it'll be better when you actually do the score, won't it? It won't. Will
sure.
Because the music will be able to do the talking.
Yeah, exactly.
For you, right?
Yeah. So that's all I can say at this point. So it's very exciting.
Top secret.
Well, a question for Harry, if I may, please. I remember talking to you at the BAFTA event in Santa Monica, and I think it was when you were scoring Martian.
Oh.
It was the day that you had a great speech and in BAFTA,
okay.
etc. I remember you mentioned that you were listening to Pink Floyd at some point during that time.
And I've on and off for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. I admire them so much.
The reason why I thought to ask this is actually because I've been listening to the score for the last 2 weeks, and the first track on the soundtrack you can immediately hear. It kind of sparked in my mind.
Of course. Look, listen, Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, my original thought when I was asked to do this movie was, man, this is a terrific opportunity to do big, spacious music. And actually, we changed course very much. And there's no hint of Pink Floyd or a literal track in there. But what was Dark Side of the Moon to me? What did it mean? It meant big, wide open spaces, chords, and a tune in the middle. And so that was exactly the first track on the CD is called Mars, and it's exactly that. So it's my theme, such as it is, but it's played in that sort of wondrous open style, and I've never had a score that could have that before. I've never done a film that could take that kind of a thing.
Well, I was going to come to my question, which was like, at what point was that a conversation with Ridley that you decided to do? And then, if I may, Peter, just to do a quick question, I just want to know how that disco music that was quite a lot in film affected your.
It didn't affect me too much. No, it didn't affect me too much. In the score, in a couple of places, there's a bass line that could have come right off an ABBA record, and that's intentional because we just had an ABBA song. But you know, for the most part, you know, the score isn't inspired by Pink Floyd, but the Dark Side of the Moon was one of my favorite records ever made by anybody. So. I don't think you can really hear that in the score. Unfortunately, I mean, I'd have liked to have got the guitar out and done all that, but it seemed very inappropriate. But we talked about it, and you know, when I set out, you know, someone mentioned the word Holst, you know, and that scared the living daylights out of me. But then, well, you know, I didn't really want to compete with that piece. But then, to be honest, there's no bad guy. Mars is not bad in this movie. It's not the bringer of war. So it actually was a great relief to me that I wasn't going to have to knock out some horrible thing that sounded a bit like the planets, and there was no need to do that.
Oh, nice. Yes, sir.
So I have a lot of questions for the panel, but this is what I was thinking about. Some movies that you may approach, or someone's asked you, for hire, you're going to approach a project, and you've watched the dailies, you've watched the movie already, the characters are coming off a bit one-dimensional, the story's not so great, but you still think there's a score somewhere there, or you've approached, or you've decided either not do the movie or do it, but you decide that you have committed to it. How do you think about that? Because some movies, the score becomes the most memorable part, just for that reason maybe. But how would you approach that, and have you found yourself feeling free to create a score that would kind of hold up the movie and add some more emotion or impact to characters that you felt could have been better?
Thank you. Let's make that a question for Mychael Danna.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. I think you take the measure of every film, whatever you're working on, and they fall on a scale of, you know, your own personal attraction to them, whether they speak to you personally, whether they whether they work technically and all those things, and then how the music can help that. I'm sure that everyone on this panel would tell you that you, as a composer, you've got to find a personal way in. You have to find something you connect with, and if not, then you have to project that onto it, and because music has to come from a place of emotion as well as intellect, so there has to be some feeling that you can conjure up and bring the music out of to go with your intellectual concept of whatever it is. So if it's not actually there in the film, then I've done that where I literally project my own story or whatever. I find some detail that speaks to me, and that's what I kind of make the score about. So there are ways of getting in, and some films, because the way they work, they don't need a great deal of music to do a great deal of the work, and some of them do. So yeah, you take the measure, the temperature of it, how hot, how cold, how emotionally expressive it is already, how much more expression it needs, and all those things, and all those factors come into play to designing coming up with a concept of what kind of score this is.
Next question, Marcus.
My question is for Mr. Harry Gregson-Williams. I was always curious to know how you got involved with the Metal Gear Solid series. It's like one of my favorite scores from you.
It's a good question, easy answer. So I got it in about 1997 or something. I've done a few action scores, but I've mostly done it helping another composer like Hans Zimmer, Trevor Rayburn. But then I did one little thing called The Replacement Killers, which I did myself. Anyhow, about 2 years after I came to America, I got this CD through through the post, and they tracked me down to Zim's place, and on the CD were these cuts from, and someone had obviously done their research, because there were my cues from Armageddon, my cues from The Rock, my cues from all these movies that weren't actually my movies, but they contained music of mine, and he just said, look, this is what I want my video game to sound like this. So flattery will get you everywhere.
Next question.
Good question for Jeff Donna. He's worked on a number of different size movies,
Right.
and for a long time. In my early days, when I was working a little bit in movies, I ran across a guy named John Huddle, who's done a wonderful film called At Septon Farm.
Right.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about working on something of that size and what the evolution, if you think there has been, of your work since your early days to now.
Well, it's true. I've moved all over the place. Just the fact that somebody mentioned Resident Evil and Good Dinosaur in the same paragraph, there's a wide range of things. I really think film composers have to do that. I mean, we often get typecast like actors now. You're the action guy, you're the hero guy, you're the dark, depressing drama guy. But
that's me.
I actually met my brother, but I mean, really what we have to do, and what we end up doing if we have any kind of longevity in our career at all, is we end up going all over the place, because that's just how it works if you're a film composer. That's really what it's supposed to be. And I think we all would like to have something different to do each year. As far as that film, that's a long time ago. But I remember that the centerpiece of the film was a guitar piece. And everything kind of came from that. So that was written first. It had to be written first because it was going to be performed by Rufus Sewell in the movie. Although Dean Parks actually played it. I played it I played the recording of it, but I needed a few punches to make it right. And Dean could play it all in one go. So they filmed his hands and Rufus's face, and they put it together such as it is. And that was a very early score, but John was a great collaborator. I wish he made a lot more films. I thought at the time he was going to, because I thought it was a pretty unusual voice he had, but sometimes having an unusual voice, scares people. But it's a fond memory, that film.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, this is a question for Ramin. What's your schedule like for doing an epic series like Game of Thrones or Person of Interest?
Good question. What's the schedule like?
Yeah, in other words, we've heard 2 years
Yeah,
to do a big movie. You probably have a little less than that.
Yeah, well, Person of Interest is, I would say, more like a regular TV show, which is the weekly grind. You get an episode, you score the next week. So that's pretty much like most of the TV shows, I would say. The big difference with Game of Thrones is that it's 10 episodes, but I look at it more like a 10-hour movie. They shoot all the episodes ahead of time. So just like with the movie, you shoot and then you go into post. So it's the same with Game of Thrones. So I actually have more time. Yeah.
So you can look at the 10 as a whole.
Pretty much. I mean,
not score it, but you can look. You can see what the hell's going on.
Not on the first season, not really, because they were just starting up. So there was, it was just like with anything when you get started. But all the other seasons, I almost can watch all 10 episodes, or at least rough cuts of the later episodes, but I get episodes in chunks and I have a lot more time, so it's not just 1 week to finish one episode, so it's actually kind of nice.
And typically, how much music is there in that? So it's an hour program, is it?
It's an hour show without commercials, so it's really 60 minutes,
wow.
But it's actually, I think, musically pretty well spotted, meaning it's in the earlier episodes, it's rather sparse, so in a 60-minute show it can be maybe as little as 18 minutes of music.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end, it can be as much as 50, 45, 50.
You, sir.
This is for Tom. Just curious, I know you've done video games and stuff, but making your jump completely from more known as an EDM artist to a composer, what that transition was like for you?
It was quite intense, but I always thought that film was a higher art form than just making music alone for me, because so many disciplines come together in one medium that I really admire. And I actually came to LA, and Harry was the first composer I met, and I I started doing a couple of things with Harry, and I saw how he worked, and I saw, oh, this is going to take way more time than I anticipated. I was one of those guys that came to LA. It's like, okay, let's go movies now, and it doesn't work like that. So when I saw him work, I really wanted to get down to the real basics of it, and I took basically the backseat in the bus. It was a very funny year because in that same year I had a worldwide #1 hit while I was assisting Harry chopping up samples and helping him making sounds, so he was writing. And it was a very, very interesting learning process, and I had to learn how to talk the language with the directors. I had to learn how to deal with the politics of things, like how to walk that fine line in pleasing the studio, pleasing the director. You always need to be the director's friend, and you work for him. But there's always extra powers that come into play. You have to learn how to deal with distress, how to be a very good manager, not the people that work for you, but also the music editors, and mostly, in my case, managing expectations, and just do that really, in a proper way.
What do you mean by that?
With managing expectations, I mean like what people expect the music to be, and what I always try to do is I try to approach a film score as left as I can, and then I need to water it down through the process, but I'm also always going to end up with something that's really like left of center, and that's what I will try to maintain as long as I can. A good example, I'm working now on Deadpool, where I took a really left approach to that movie. I can't say much about it, but
How's
the first...
that going for you?
Yeah, it's going well, but
That's a really mainstream movie to take a left-hand approach.
Yeah, but I mean, the first time I played the music to the studio, they were like, what? This is a score? And so you just take it from there. But to round up your question, it's been a long road, and I'm really happy I took it. I had great 25 years touring around the world and playing and all doing that, but I'm really happy where I am right now. And film scoring is teamwork, and like you guys probably all can acknowledge this. Like the filmmakers that we work with are so great people generally. They're very intelligent and smart, and they usually bring out the best in you. I mean, there are also examples where they bring out the worst in you, but...
Next question.
I don't have a lot of experience here, but so far it's not. It's the same thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, the question is about thematic writing. In the golden age, let's say, when Steiner wrote Gone with the Wind, he had 11 separate leitmotifs for each of the 11 principal characters, and Terra itself, which interplayed throughout the film. Clearly, there's a different sensibility in modern scoring. Does anyone can speak to why we don't see that same type of writing in modern cinema today?
Harry, I'll give you that question.
Oh, thanks. I'm probably not the right person to ask because I've often been accused of being untuned for or whatever because I really enjoy sort of the sound spectrums of my score, so I'm really into that as well. But so I remember thinking, wow, I just wrote a really melodic score, and a really good friend of mine, composer Nick Lenny-Smith, said, man, I just saw Narnia. This was 10 years ago or something. I saw Narnia, man. You could have written a theme. I'm like, well, I did. You never heard it. He didn't hear it as such. You know what I mean? Now I know him very well. He was like me, a chorister in England, and I respect him musically, and it horrified me that he didn't really hear a tune. So I don't know. I'm leitmotifs. I have about 11 or 23 of them for one movie, but we all do our best with that. I don't know what it was like back then, for Steiner, but now, working for Tony Scott, for instance, what he required, and he didn't want anything different from me. What he wanted from me was something light, like a piano or glockenspiel, or something bright and light, and something dark. So two things playing at once. He wanted contrast, and he wanted the sort of thing that I kind of learned to give him. So if you think that my score is very repetitive, then you're missing the point. We were actually trying to mold the whole sound. We weren't trying to do it differently every time. We were trying to make the best of what his vision was, which is his camera's all over the place, and hello, the music's following that. The music's actually glued to the picture. So, yeah, I'm not really the right person to talk about that. You know, with The Martian, I think I wrote 3 themes, and one of them is strong, and it plays throughout the movie. You could be forgiven for missing the other 2, but they're there.
But I wonder if, I think a big part of it is just the directors feel, I think modern directors feel that melody is manipulative, that it's saying too much. And I think directors are very fearful, unlike the golden age where there was no such reticence in telegraphing emotion and plot and making everything very literal and very clear. I think nowadays directors feel the audiences are more intelligent, more sensitive, and more afraid of being manipulated and feel that they're being led around emotionally, and there's pushback from the audience as soon as you push them too far. And so I think there's a great many directors that's the directive. I mean, I know that many of us are told, like, oh, I like this theme, but can you take the melody out of it? Like, I don't want the melody. Which is an interesting contrast, where Jeff and I just did The Good Dinosaur, where John Lasseter sat us down and went, melodies, that's what I want. I want really good melodies, and then I want some good melodies, and I want people to hear this tune that you write in 5 years and go, oh yeah, Good Dinosaur.
He wanted to know why there were no melodies in film music.
Yeah.
He said, what's happened? He said, and he talked about music from 20 years ago. I think he mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he said, what's up? Like, why has it gone away? And
it's not the composer. It's not that we can't write melodies. It's that we're told not to, basically, or that's how that's the concept that fits the film. And often that's the right answer.
And what he said was, we don't do that here.
Right.
Next question. Can I say something too? Just a little thing to add. I also think that today we have the advantage of using samplers of from any source. Like we can use sound on the music, and sometimes to have a single note that sounds like weird, or like some with a sound that has been never heard, gives a emotion. So sometimes you don't need that much of melody to create a emotion.
Your use of the siren.
Yeah, could be that one example, or like in in the Heart of the Sea, I try to use sounds from the sea, like how the wind would sound, and the water and all that, and then we made notes out of that, and just like a single note, like it gives a big emotion, which is all about with the music, So,
thank you.
This question's actually for him. So you've worked a lot with Andrew Adamson for Chronicles of Narnia and the Shrek movies. So
well, Andrew's become a kind of friend now. So through the Shrek movies, and then I was so lucky that he took me. People ask me, how did you come to do the Narnia series? And I said, well, quite simply, I did the Shrek ones, and I was, he was the one who managed to get the job, and he just pulled me along. So I felt very fortunate to do that. But I actually did a movie that you haven't mentioned. And you haven't mentioned it because you haven't seen it. And there's a reason for that. A movie called Mr. Pip. And he asked me about 3 years to do this, 3 years ago to do this movie. He asked me to co-write it, which I thought was kind of a strange request. I was wondering whether it was going to be that old John Powell thing again. But it wasn't that chestnut. No, it was with, what's Neil Finn's brother called? Something else Finn.
Neil Finn's brother.
I've forgotten his first name now. Tim Finn, yeah.
Tim Finn.
So it was because he's a New Zealander, and so is Andrew. And for some reason, they needed the funding from New Zealand. They needed a New Zealand composer involved. So I did that movie, and it never saw a release here. It had Hugh Laurie in the lead part. It's really good. I thought it was an awesome movie. But it was interesting that was the first movie we did after the Shreks and the Narnias where we had kind of become friends. So I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work, but it worked out. But he's a good guy. I had dinner with him the other night, and he's the same as the rest of us, really. He's looking for his next move. I mean, if you start with a franchise that made billions of dollars for DreamWorks, and the two Narnias that he did were very successful, it must be difficult to know where to move next, and he's figuring that out.
Next question.
Question for Tom. How do you think your background in electronic music has influenced kind of your process in film scoring?
I would say that I've experimented with electronic sounds not only as an artist, but that later I started also got more into sound design with software programs like Medicine, Kima, and Reactor 6 and a couple of other programs. And I always felt that when electronic music became hip to use in film scoring, it was very effective in the form, how I call it, as a needle drop. So there's an action scene, it's like boom, something starts like really aggressive, really full on. I think one of the first movies where electronic music was really used effectively is on the scoring, is actually your score, Phone Booth, with the very fast. I mean, among electronic producers, that was a movie that was talked about a lot, that Harry did. But then later I found out that as I started working on movies more and more, and when I started doing my own things, that the pure electronic sound was too two-dimensional, and it sits there in the front of the speaker, and it doesn't wrap around you as a blanket, and I really felt like it's taking you out of the story or something like that. So I spent a lot of time getting into sound design, how to make electronic music true to its nature to a certain aspect, but give it more a three-dimensional character. And that's also the point when I started writing in surround, not in the sense that the music needs to be surround, but I started doing unique arrangements for the speakers in the back, and now I'm doing that in 7.1 too. And that allows you to do a different arrangement of the same type of sounds in different speakers that don't necessarily take you out of the story, but actually add something to it. So.
Thank you. Next question.
Got a small one from Poland for Ramin. Just a short question. Are you planning to come to Europe one of these short films?
I hope so. Yeah, hopefully next year. I think so. Yes.
I was wondering, Tom, about the upcoming Batman versus Superman. What is it like to work with Hans, and what is the balance of the load as far as what sound each is producing? And I mean, obviously, there's not a lot you can talk about before it's come out, but what's the work process been like?
If he told you, he had
No, there's not a lot I can say about this.
Are you working on it, or it's done? Or
No, it's done.
It's done?
Yeah, it's done.
Oh, there you go.
But we did work on Man of Steel like that, and you know, Hans tries to benefit from your strong points, and that's what he's really good at. You know, he knows what he's good at, and then when there are certain parts missing that he likes as an architect for the score, he finds the right people to help him with that. And with Man of Steel, I was the guy that helped him out the most on that, to, you know, to fill out those. And what was mentioned before, I was thinking also about, you know, different things. When you were talking about thematics, there was like, when we saw the movie for the first time, there was this thing called the World Engine, and it made this really awesome sound, like, and then it would go down, it would repeat and stuff. And I was like, that's a theme right there. And then, so we started using that, and the director really liked that idea. But yeah, so that's kind of how it works.
We have time for 2 more questions. Okay, you had a question, sir.
This was following the subject of themes. So you're on a movie, and sometimes the theme carries the movie, and there's a very strong theme, and sometimes what is more memorable, and I'm asking, comparing one to the other, what you want to be stronger, there's also very strong character themes. So you find a theme to back characters, like, say, you know, what you use for Game of Thrones. How do you approach that? Do you try and even it out, or do you feel sometimes that it's better off to have really strong theme music for the characters?
Let's give that.
That's what you call it, for character. You're right.
Let's give that to Ramin.
Well, I think if I understand the question correctly, with Game of Thrones, I think what actually was tricky before I even started writing the music, when we sat down just discussing the conceptual approach, was that they said to me, we have a million characters in the show, there's a million plots, how do we actually not overwrite with themes, and that there's so many themes, you go from one theme to the next and you don't know what's going on anymore.
So how do you do that?
Well, I don't know if I did the right thing, but what we tried is actually to just kind of stick with certain characters that they were emphasizing on, and for, you know, as for those that have seen the shows, there's these different families within those. There's different characters that have different journeys. So some characters didn't get a theme. Sometimes just the families have a theme. Sometimes if one of these within the families, the character breaks out and does this thing, then we decide, okay, now it's time. Like, for example, Theon didn't have a theme in season 1, and then in season 2 he became much more important. So then we said, you know what, now it's actually time to give this person a theme. So before that, I never had one for him. So I guess you kind of follow the storytelling of how you want to guide the audience, you know, with the plot, and that's kind of what you try to do with the music.
The opening theme is amazing. I mean, I hear it in my head all the time.
Well, that's actually a whole different story, because I was working on the episodes, and we had our first meeting, and I played music, and there wasn't a lot of time before the show was on the air, and then so I played some music, and then they said, oh, by the way, we also need a main title theme. So we forgot to tell you, and it's 2 minutes long, so that was a whole other thing. So.
Well, was there a particular, when you had that choice?
I'm sorry, sir, but we actually have our last question. Last question? Gareth, I'll give it to you.
Okay, there's a broad question for everybody. What do you want John Williams' score to deliver for you when Star Wars comes out?
Okay.
If that's an okay question.
That's okay. That's okay to wrap it up. Roque, what do you want Star Wars to do for you when you hear it? Okay. Harry, I'll let you take up the mantle.
I'm one of the few people on this planet that hasn't seen a Star Wars movie. I'm not really interested. I'm interested in the music, sure, but I haven't really seen a Star Wars movie. You know, you can tell by my accent, I'm not from Glendale. So I'm probably not best qualified to speak. I mean, you know, the guy's the leader of the pack, right? So we expect the best. So that's what I expect. So let's all rave about it. I'm sure it'll be Oscar nominated, if not Oscar winning. Great, fantastic, bring it on. But in terms of seeing the movie and having some expectations, I have none. Sorry,
well,
America.
I want to thank our amazing composers for coming to Fans of Film Music, the 6th edition. Let's give a big hand for Roque Baños. Jeff Danna, Mychael Danna, Ramin Djawadi, Harry Greyson-Williams, and Tom Holkenborg, Junkie XL. Okay, I'm going to turn the mic over to Peter Hackman, who's going to announce our raffle.
We're going to do a quick raffle, guys, so talk amongst yourselves for a few minutes. We're going to do the raffle at lightning speed, and then we're going to have one line starting over there for the composers. So stay seated.
Can I steal one of your cookies?
Please, man. You can have mine.